Welcome back, and now for your world news, our first story coming out of the U.S. as Donald Trump has reached the number of delegates needed to clinch the Republican presidential nomination.
We have a key race alert right now. Donald Trump now has reached the number of delegates needed to clinch the Republican presidential nomination.
1237 was that magic number we've been shooting for throughout this entire election season. Which Republican was going to get there? That's 50% plus one of the delegates needed to secure the nomination. And you were right to note that this is, how can this happen on a day without a primary or caucus? It's because CNN has been reporting out how these unbound delegates who are not, their vote on the convention floor is not related necessarily to a primary or caucus result. They're free agents, if you will. We've been reporting out, talking to them, finding out where they've been. Some of them were previously just uncommitted. Some of them were committed to other candidates who have since dropped out, but have now moved to Trump's column. With those reports coming back in, he crosses that magic number, and he, has all but secured the nomination. He won't officially become the nominee, Wolf, until the votes are cast on the convention floor in Cleveland in July, but he will keep that presumptive nominee title that he's been using for the last little bit, and he has clinched that.
James Franny reports from Ishima, where a group of 7 leaders have voiced concern about emerging economies at the summit in Japan. Crisis? What crisis? The G7 leaders seemed to be in relaxed mood as they arrived at the summit venue in Japan. For Britain's David Cameron, it was a chance to get away from the heat of his campaign to keep Britain in the European Union, and they have had a huge entree over the next 2 days.
Crisis? What crisis? The G7 leaders seemed to be in relaxed mood as they arrived at the summit venue in Japan. For Britain's David Cameron, it was a chance to get away from the heat of his campaign to keep Britain in the European Union. Over the next 2 days, their top priority is how to address slowing growth in China and other emerging markets. Japan says government should spend more to boost growth.
As you know, that the Prime Minister Abe has been taking the economic policy called Abenomics. I think this economic plan can be applied to the other countries and to the global economies as well.
China is also under fire for alleged steel dumping when products are sold abroad well below domestic prices. EU officials believe tougher tariffs are needed to save European jobs.
We have a general problem in Europe when it comes to the Chinese overcapacity. This is affecting all our countries. We have 22 steel producing countries in the European Union, and all the countries having steel industries on their territories have the right to defend their industry.
The leaders have agreed on the need to send a strong message on claims in the Western Pacific, where China is locked in territorial disputes with Japan and several Southeast Asian nations. China has replied that the issue has nothing to do with the G7.
Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba's share price dived by almost 7% on Wednesday, following the revelation that the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is investigating Alibaba's group accounting practices to determine whether they violated federal laws. The main focus of the investigation includes the company's growth rate and its relations with affiliated companies, especially the logistics firm's network.
The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is investigating Alibaba Group's accounting practices to determine whether they violated federal laws. The main focus of the investigation includes the company's growth rate and its relations with affiliated companies, especially the logistic firm Cainiao Network. Cainiao Network is owned by Alibaba and several other Chinese courier companies. Alibaba holds 47% of the firm's shares, which means, theoretically, it can exclude Cainiao's deficit from its annual report. That is the core debate of Alibaba's accounting methods.
They actually control that logistics company and should consolidate, which would depress the margins. That's what the SEC is going to need to decide.
Alibaba spokesman Robert Christie said the company's annual report included Cainiao's profit, revenue, and balance sheet data. He said that the figures are the kind of information that will address the underlying issues in the SEC's inquiry. Information transparency is a major issue for U.S.-listed Chinese companies. Alibaba has made some changes to meet the inquiry. For example, it has said it will release new businesses' cost structures and profit data this year. Alibaba says the current investigation should not be seen as an indication that the company has violated federal securities laws. Moreover, it said that it was actively cooperating with investigators.
Hundreds of migrants and refugees who survived when their boat capsized in the Mediterranean have arrived in Italy. The Italian Coast Guard says more than 5,500 people were rescued in just 2 days this week. Better weather is prompting more people to risk their lives at sea. Al Jazeera's Emma Hayward reports.
It was a moment of complete desperation. Hundreds of refugees and migrants on board a wooden fishing boat bound for Europe. Within seconds, it starts to list. The passengers try to cling on but can't. Moments later, the boat fully capsizes, and there's panic as people try to cling to whatever they can. This happened not far from the Libyan coast and captured for the first time since the current refugee crisis began. A large-scale capsizing in the Mediterranean. An Italian Navy vessel on patrol had spotted the dilapidated vessel. Helicopters and small boats were deployed to help, with Italian sailors throwing life jackets and inflatable dinghies to those in the water. Women and children were among the hundreds brought to safety, but several people are known not to have made it. Italy's Coast Guard says in just 2 days this week it rescued 5,600 people in the Mediterranean. Many of those being picked up are from sub-Saharan Africa and started their journey by sea in Libya, where efforts to clamp down on people smuggling are failing. Another boat is known to have overturned on Thursday off the coast of Libya. It was spotted sinking fast. Those that survived their boat overturning arrived in Italy huddled together on board a Navy vessel. At times they must have feared they wouldn't make it this far. The calm weather allowing this latest large movement of people is likely to increase in the coming days, along with the risks involved. Emma Hayward, Al Jazeera.
That brings us to the end of your IKtv news update. I am Daniel Vera, thanking you for watching with us again. Don't forget that you can check out a recap of your local weather forecast. Have a good night.